Hey everyone, it's Nancy Miller, and this is a teaser of the January bonus episode of Dead Sleep True Crime for Bedtime. Dead Sleep is ad-free, so your support keeps this show going. If you are intrigued by what you hear, you can get the full episode by becoming a subscriber via Spotify, Patreon, and Apple Podcasts. Good evening, welcome back, and Happy New Year. This is the January bonus episode of Dead Sleep True Crime for Bedtime. I'm Nancy Miller, and I'm so happy that you're here. And thanks to everyone who reached out during these past very strange and difficult days with the fires happening in Los Angeles. Part of what Dead Sleep is supposed to do is offer us an escape. And that goes for me too. Creating this show has actually given me focus during some pretty hard times. So things here in LA are fine for me in my little world right now. And I'll just say thank you for the opportunity to make this show. It exists because of your support. And I think the best way to show my appreciation of your subscription to this show is just by getting straight into the story. Tonight's bonus is a dark saga about a high-profile murder case, one that's still making its way through the courts. A case that's been covered, and I'll link to those key sources in the show notes. But this is the Dead Sleepy version, which means a lot of unusual detours and unique details to fatigue your mind so you can fall asleep. There's one piece of common advice, a bit of wisdom given to every aspiring writer. And that advice is, write about what you know. In the case of an author named Corey Richins, sadly, what she knew about was death. Tragic, sudden death, and terrible, aching grief. Corey's nightmare began in a large 5-bedroom house in an area of Utah just outside of Park City called Camas Valley. It was March 4th, 2022, around 3 o'clock in the morning, when 32-year-old Corey discovered her 39-year-old husband, Eric, in bed, unresponsive. When she reached out to him, he was cold to the touch. When the EMTs arrived, they tried to resuscitate him, but it was no use. Eric Richins was dead, just 2 months before his 40th birthday. Corey and Eric were together nearly 10 years with 3 children, all of them boys under the age of 10. Eric's death left a huge hole in Corey's life. She was now a young widow, barely in her 30s, with 3 young sons to take care of. Her boys were old enough to grasp that their father wasn't coming back, but they weren't quite old enough to understand what death was, what it meant, what happened to their father, and why. What was Corey to say? Part of the problem was Eric's death was sudden, unexpected, and mysterious. It was going to take time to figure out what exactly had happened. In the meantime, Corey had her 3 sons to think about. She wanted to help her 3 young boys work through their grief, especially at nighttime when the boys cried and had a hard time falling asleep. When she searched online for resources, books that she might read to her sons, a bedtime story that might also help them heal, she couldn't find what she needed. So Corey got creative. She and her 3 sons wrote a book together. Weaving their different emotions and grieving processes, into what they'd experienced that year. Corey said she later worked with an illustrator to self-publish a children's book that reflected that collaboration. The result was a colorful, illustrated book called Are You With Me? And the book was described in a short blurb as written to create peace and comfort for children who have lost a loved one. A book to reassure children that although your loved one is not present, their presence always exists, and they walk through life with you as if they were here. In the book, the actual story is about a little boy, a composite drawn from her 3 sons, who goes about his day, from walking down the hallways at school to scoring a goal at a soccer game. Throughout it all, his big blue eyes are sad, tears brimming at the edges, as the little boy longs for the presence of his father, and he wonders, are you with me? And that book, with heartbreak and melancholy, captures what a lot of people feel. The desire for a child to know, to feel like their lost loved one is there. That no matter how old you are, you want that loved one, that person who took care of you, your mother, your father, whoever it was. You want to know that when they're gone, there's still a part of them that sees you, that they're proud of you at your highest highs and comfort you at your lowest lows. Corey's vision was straightforward and true to life. The illustrations in this book are of a father and son, and the father was drawn to look exactly like Eric Richins. The Eric depicted in the book is what real human Eric wore in real life. A white baseball hat, face with a scraggly reddish beard, a sporty down vest, and sneakers. Except there were 2 small and controversial details. In Corey's book, Eric gets an angel glow-up. On top of his baseball cap, there's a bright yellow gold halo. And on his back are enormous white angel wings. He hovers above the clouds, and as the boy looks around for his father, he can't see him. But in the story, he can hear his father's words. The book ends with the father assuring his son that even if he can't see him, he can feel him. That when there's a chill in the wind, the father says, the kind that gives the boy a little shiver, that's him. It's Dad, and he's right there with you, always. Corey had the illustrator draw their whole family from the back, facing away from the reader, looking out into the horizon. The 3 boys and the family dog, with Corey and Angel Eric in the middle, side by side. She made a point of dedicating this book to her amazing husband and wonderful father, that he was always on their minds and forever in their hearts. Corey was proud of this book because she believed it helped her and her boys, and she wanted other people to read it, to get that same comfort, to pay it forward. So that's how she ended up on television. Just over a year since her husband died, she appeared on a morning show called Good Things Utah. Corey's book was self-published, so going on Good Things Utah was a way for her to generate press. And that appearance would indeed get her a lot of attention, just not in the way she'd planned. Dina Marie Manzanares was, and still is, one of the co-hosts of Good Things Utah. And Dina Marie, like most hosts of morning shows, was bright and upbeat and put together with expertly curled mermaid hair, full makeup, a sleek outfit. What a producer might call camera ready. Dina Marie was a lifestyle reporter, a TV host with a background in performing, a trained actor who'd studied in New York. And her acting skills, they appeared to pay off during her interview with Corey Richins. On the outside, Dina smiled sympathetically as Corey told her the story of her love and loss. But later, much later, she'd admit what she was really thinking secretly. She didn't even want to say it out loud because, honestly, Dina Marie wasn't one to judge. But she had to admit when Corey Richins showed up at the studio for Good Things Utah, she looked different than most of the guests. Most people who show up for their first ever TV appearance tend to overdo it. They come to the station all dressed up, in their very best clothes, the kind they might wear to church or a job interview. Corey didn't look like that. Dina couldn't help but notice Corey's shoulder-length brown hair looked haphazardly raked through, like maybe she'd brushed it with her hands. She had sharp features, made more severe by a deep side part. Her pallid complexion warmed a bit by a generous dusting of bronzer. Her clothing was casual. Corey wore a brown leather jacket with a brown hoodie underneath, dark jeans and sneakers. And her demeanor was casual too. Or maybe a better word was disconnected from the moment. Like she wasn't an author promoting a book she was passionate about on TV, but running errands. And this was just one quick pit stop, one of a long to-do list of things that she needed to get done. Honestly, who could blame her? With everything Corey had been through, Dina was a mother and wasn't about to judge Corey. What she'd noticed, really, was what any savvy interviewer might. It was the little details, those inconsistencies where the insides didn't match the outsides. Corey's words conveyed a woman who had come through the fire, that she grieved and was ready to move on. And she was there to share her expertise, that book, with the world. But Corey's detached demeanor and haphazard presence led her to wonder if maybe she was still working through some stuff, that her husband's death wasn't resolved. Even his cause of death seemed murky. On the show, they focused on the book. They didn't talk about Eric and how he died. Off camera, Corey didn't reveal much about the circumstances around Eric's passing, just that it was sudden and caused by complications from COVID, something with his lungs. Dina didn't pry. This was Good Things Utah, so Dina did her job and focused on the good things. Like this heartbreaking but wonderful book written by this brave woman and fabulous author. So folks, if you know anyone who suffered this terrible loss, check out Corey Richins' book, Are You With Me? Available on Amazon, etc., etc. Again, people grieve in their own way, and Dina was not there to judge. It was just an observation. Something that just crossed her mind. Something she'd mention later when everyone asked Dina, could she see it? Could she tell? Did she know? The interview with Corey was just one segment in a 2.5-hour-long morning show that most people watched while doing other things, making breakfast, getting dressed. There was nothing about that interview that stood out. At least not to Dina, not that day. The following morning, however, when Dina checked her email, she spotted a subject line that caught her attention because it matched the title of Corey's book, Are You With Me? Maybe someone was emailing to thank them for that segment. maybe share a story of their own grief. But when Dina opened it, she was in for a shock. The email was sent anonymously, and the body of the email was just one sentence. It read, in all caps, with multiple angry exclamation points. "You know she killed her husband." All over the office, every single person at that station received the same email. The one accusing Corey Richins of murdering her husband, Eric Richins. Dina Marie and the team at Good Things Utah were unsettled by it. If this were true, they'd just platformed a woman who, killed her husband and then a year later wrote a book about grief with her kids? Dina was a lifestyle reporter. Her show was called Good Things Utah. This wasn't Dateline. She didn't know what to think. Not too long after that weird email, Dina received another message, this time through Facebook. Someone reaching out through an anonymous ghost account. Only this time, this message was even more urgent and demanding. That she really needed to investigate Corey Richins in the suspicious death of her husband, Eric. As far as Dina or anyone at that TV station knew, Corey's husband died from some respiratory issue related to COVID, like Corey said. There were no reports to the contrary. Corey Richins hadn't been arrested or charged with any crime. Besides, her husband died over a year ago. One would think there would have been an investigation. Why hadn't police made an arrest? So what was really going on here? Was Corey Richins a grieving wife and mother, eager to pay it forward? Or was she a black widow, looking to cash in?